Cloud. This event is in partnership with HCL Technologies and NetApp. My name is Andriana Albert, and I will be your MC today. Avasant is thrilled to have partnered with such innovative organizations to bring an hour of thought leadership and expert insights to our audience. Thank you again to HCL and NetApp for your partnership. As we aim to make these sessions as interactive as possible, we encourage you to utilize the chat and Q&A features on your dashboard to pose questions to the panelists. They will be answering them live throughout the session. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to today's moderator, Srini Krishnan. Srini is a partner and head of UK and EMEA for Avasant. Srini, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Andriana. Absolute pleasure. And thank you to not only just our partners, HCL and NetApp, but also to every one of you who has joined us. I recognize it's another call in your busy schedule, so thank you very much for joining us. We hope we will deliver a very exciting, interesting conversation on the subject of optimizing cloud. Thank you very much again. As part of our research and thought leadership, we've been looking at this subject of cloud adoption across the globe. And one of the things that we recently, when we've been, and our research is ongoing, there has been a substantive increase in adoption of cloud. The pace at which the whole conversation of if cloud, when, has now moved very rapidly to now. What used to be a joke is now reality and is becoming a business imperative. And the last 20 months of COVID has sort of just accelerated that move to the cloud. As we look at sort of where the IT spend or enterprises are spending, we're looking at a substantive increase in security, cloud applications, cloud infrastructure. So this is now just reality, and it's no longer just a piece of technology. If you go to the next slide, the conversation, which earlier used to be a technology-driven, a CIO-level driven conversation, is no longer that. We now find when we are talking to our clients, we are finding market-facing business executives, leadership from customer engaging functions, CFOs, CHROs, who are actually driving this conversation. They are the ones who are driving the decision on the kind of cloud infrastructure that enterprises are creating, whether it's hybrid, multi-cloud, public, private. And cloud is no longer that destination or a technology that was just residing in IT functions. It has now become a platform, a necessary platform upon which businesses are driving their value proposition. They're looking to engage with customers. They're looking to optimize their functions, their processes, and drive business value. And the just added driver here is COVID. Remote engagement with customers, remote engagement with employees, associates, has just meant that the robustness that's required of this platform has just increased. And this is really the crux of the conversation today. If you go to the next slide, Lacey. We really want to be talking about, there are multiple examples. The use cases have just exponentially grown. So as I said, the discussion is not about what kind of cloud infrastructure. The discussion is about how do you use the cloud infrastructure to drive business value. But it's not all rosy. As all technology deployment has shown us over the multiple years that we've been doing this, there are challenges. Organizations are not necessarily able to drive value. Let's see if you could go to the next slide, please. The challenges are really about the investments that have gone in. Go to the next slide to move forward. It's not just about deploying or ensuring that everything moves to cloud, even if it's secure. The question is, how do businesses drive value out of it? And one of the things that we have noticed in our research, Lacey, if you could go to the next slide, please, is really there are a certain set of factors that are still inhibiting organizations from driving optimum value, whether it's around security and compliance, whether it's around integrating multiple cloud, or it is about migrating and integrating multiple different legacy systems that are still and that are going to change over time. But a key one around is really about governance. How do business processes come together with this cloud technology and enable business leaders, market-facing teams, reimagine their business processes? And that's really the crux of this conversation that we would like to engage with. And I'm very happy to welcome Piyush and Amiram and Sudeep. I'd like to introduce, I would request Piyush, Amiram, and Sudeep to introduce themselves and then we can get the discussion started. Piyush?
Thanks, Srinivas. Hello, everyone. My name is Piyush Saxena, and I run hybrid cloud business for HCL Technologies globally. I'm based out of India. Happy to be part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Piyush. Amiram?
Hello, Srinivas. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Amiram, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Spot.io, a company that is specializing in cloud automation and optimization. And the company was acquired about 18 months ago by NetApp, the leading company of storage. And since then, I'm leading the division called Spot by NetApp, which is the expansion of everything in cloud. So really excited to be here, and thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you. Sudeep?
Hey, Srini, thanks very much for having me. Hi, everyone. I am Sudeep Roy, and I'm a fellow with Avasant, been in the industry for about 22 years, probably a little bit more than that. Looking forward to a lively discussion. And cloud is extremely important, and it's becoming more and more part of our daily lives. And I'm going to more look at from a business perspective and see where and how we can drive more value out of the cloud propositions that's coming out in today's market.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's great to have you. And to kick off the conversation, I just want to have some baseline setup. We talk about business value. We talk about technology. But I think there's a more fundamental question. And that is, what is the problem we're looking to solve? We don't want to be in a situation where we have a hammer and then everything becomes a tool. So what I would like to kick off with Piyush, Amiram, and Sudeep is, when you talk to clients, what is the exam question they set for you? Technology comes later. What are the questions that they're asking? What are the outcomes that they are looking to achieve where your solution or your technology can come into play? And I made this point earlier. The conversations these days are not just the CIOs, but the business leaders, the CFOs, the chief marketing officers, and so on. So Piyush, I'd probably, if you could set the ball rolling, what are the questions that clients are asking of you to solve?
Sure, Sriram. Fortunately, I have the privilege of interfacing with a lot of global customers who are going through this cloud journey. And as we all know, cloud is extremely critical to the digital initiatives these customers are driving today. And I do get a lot of diverse questions. There are customers who want to accelerate the complete cloud journey. There are customers who are still thinking about modernization versus lift and shift. There are customers who are thinking about how do they get the right skills in place to manage the multi-cloud environment, right? But one thing which is consistent across most of these customers is how do you help me reduce my spend, or how do you help me optimize my spend, right? Which is where a lot of customers come back and ask us about FinOps or cloud cost management. How can we help them with? And I think this is one area where 100% of my conversations with my customers, this topic definitely comes up.
Piyush, thank you. Just one clarification. You mentioned FinOps. It's a term that many organizations use. Just to be level set for this purpose of this conversation, what is the scope of FinOps?
Yeah, I think that's a very critical question, because when we talk to our customers and the customer say FinOps, at times they are referring to FinOps in terms of how can you help me reduce my cost, right? There are customers who are asking for a FinOps expert, right, when they are talking about FinOps. So it has different meaning for different customers, right? But broadly, when we are talking from the FinOps perspective, it is essentially when you are looking at your cloud journey, how do you take decisions around cloud cost optimizations from three critical parameters, right? Speed, cost, and quality trade-offs, right? So just a simple example, if you are launching a new business critical application, speed is of utmost importance to you. And, cost at that point in time may not be so critical, right? So when you're talking about FinOps, you will be focusing on speed. Same application, when it's in production, quality will be critical. Cost again may be very critical, right? So it keeps changing, but this is the complete package when you look at speed, cost, and quality trade-off when you talk about FinOps.
Great. Amiram, I'm going to ask you this question a slightly different way. When you founded this company, and obviously you talked about cloud optimization, but from a business, a CEO, a CFO, a CTO perspective, what was the problem that you were looking to solve for?
So what I've seen, I think by this date, talking to, I would say, thousands of customers, and even early on, is that customers are looking for the cloud for two main things that has a lot of derivatives. The two things is speed and agility. I think people understand that with cloud, you can get machines much quicker. You can get your team onboarded much quicker. Your business can really benefit from that. You can deploy applications faster. Your developers can run faster. And at the end of the day, the three vectors that we saw as a consequence of this was that there was a problem that was true 6 years ago and will be true in 10 years from now, which is cloud is getting more and more complicated. If you think about it, the number of new services that are introduced to the cloud and the way that people consume compute, from VMs to containers to serverless, like the cloud is becoming very complicated. And the second thing, the cloud is becoming more expensive. And that was true 6 years ago and will be true in 10 years from now, because we use more, we consume more, we deploy more applications, we route more code, more people are touching the cloud, more customers are accessing our cloud. So it's just becoming, our bill is not gonna get lower, it's just gonna get higher. And add to these two things, which is getting more complicated and more expensive, there is really shortage of talent that can master this. People may know really well one specific thing, like doing CI/CD well in the cloud, or doing securing something in the cloud, or automating something in the cloud, but you can't really have a team that does everything onboarding, deployment, cost optimization, security, everything. So there's a shortage of talent that does it. And in a multi-cloud world, so the team might know really good AWS, but now they need to learn GCP and they need to learn Azure. In short, that's what we've been seeing. And when we try to develop products, so we try to develop products to save time, save money, and help companies when they scale their cloud operations, not to need to scale the team all the time when they scale their infrastructure.
Thank you, Miriam. Sudeep, I'm going to take a business lens with you. If you sort of think about it, cost optimization or agility, one way to think about it is on the technology side. And you look at what's the cost of technology and cost of operations. But if you sort of take a total cost of operations approach, you're moving not just, you're expanding the boundaries of cloud and where it goes, where it begins and ends the technology and where it gets into a finance function or a marketing function. And so at an enterprise level, if you start to think about TCO and cost, is there a discussion that companies are asking, optimize my IT, but suddenly the costs bubble up in the business end? So what is it you are listening to when in terms of challenges and questions that companies are asking?
Sure. So Srini, sorry. So it's very interesting. We had a pre-COVID world, and we now have a post-COVID world. And I do a little bit of sourcing work as well for quite a few Fortune 5,000, the Fortune 500 companies as well. And there was a question pre-COVID that, okay, can you move us to the cloud? Post-COVID, that question is gone. So now the question is that we are cloud first. Can you give us a strategy that we can remain cloud first and then go from there? So organizations have already, so there is no more selling required for cloud. I'm sure Piyush will agree that, there is, he doesn't have to sell cloud anymore. The clients already are aware of the cloud. The enterprise is aware of cloud, and the enterprise is buying cloud. They know that they cannot be on-prem anymore. And anybody who is on-prem at the moment is because of the legacy. Now, the issue here is not just total cost of ownership, but the issue here is what is the technical debt that you're creating when either going into cloud or while getting into a situation where you're transitioning into the cloud. Now, you've got one type of customer who are all and everything in cloud, and that's an easier customer, and that's an easier TCO to get to. But you've got customers who've got legacy here, you've got mainframe, you've got legacy, and then you've got parts in the cloud. You've got customers, again, coming from an automation perspective. I've got clients who are going into, who have got bots deployed in the cloud, who have bots coming out of the cloud, coming into their hybrid environment and interacting with their mainframe systems out here. Now, and again, going back to what Amiram has said, that is an extremely complex situation. So clouds have become, environments have become really, really complex. And because environments are becoming complex, cloud itself is also becoming complex. I mean, you have huge amount of complexity, and the complexity is not going to go down. As I completely agree with Amiram. And because complexity is not going to go down, your cost is not going to go down. And there is that another additional cost layer, which is becoming extremely important every single day, and that is the security layer. And the security layer whether it is, you're looking at government cloud, whether you're looking at hybrid cloud, private cloud, public cloud, whether it's Google, AWS, Azure, it doesn't matter. The cost of security is going to overshadow all other tertiary costs that's related to the overall cloud infrastructure. And that is where the problem is. And actually, I doubt whether any enterprise is looking at their cloud infrastructure and saying, hey, what is going to be my total cost of ownership, against on-prem? Because that business case doesn't exist anymore. You can't be on-prem. You need to be on cloud. So now you've got enterprises who are going to look at, okay, what's the total cost of ownership between Google Cloud and AWS, or Azure and AWS? And that's the conversation that's going to happen more and more.
Excellent. Thank you.
Just wanted to reflect on what Sudeep shared. One, definitely, it's a good time to invest in cloud security stocks, although they have spiked a lot in the last 6 months, but continue to see good growth over there. Just one view, look, a lot of customers, from cloud native point of view, yes, that's the direction they are moving towards. But a lot of customers are also looking at, modernization-led approach compared to lift and shift approach, which was there pre-COVID, right? Because they have realized that lift and shift may probably not result in the speed, agility, and cost savings that they are looking at. And therefore, when we are talking about cloud, a very easy decision. I think, for legacy applications, some of the back office applications, customers may still continue with on-prem and take more of a modernization, SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS approach.
That's an interesting point, but and Amiram, I'm going to bring you in because you literally flagged off, and Sudeep also built on it, the whole point of complexity, right? Now, if you look from a client perspective, right, it's and as consultants and service consultants, we always throw this, go and optimize. How do you begin that conversation with a client to say, this is what you need to optimize. This is how we will. This is the journey. This is what you will see. This is the lights that you will see at the end of the tunnel. Because if they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's all mythical and sort of Hogwarts kind of a world, it becomes difficult. And decision making, and we spoke about it. Decision making this is not just a CIO decision. CEOs are getting involved. Chief risk officers are getting involved, and they may not necessarily be as technically literate as some of you. So how do you have that? How do you tell them what optimization is? How do you achieve agility, speed, and the other aspects? How do you begin that conversation?
Srinivas,
go ahead, Amiram.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And Amiram, Piyush, I will ask the same question to you after Amiram. Please, Amiram, go ahead.
So I'm actually smiling because you used a very unique and strategic word when you ask the question. The word that you use is need. And I will tell you something about this. When customers are moving to the cloud introducing a new way to purchase IT, which is pay per use. This introducing a whole new set of challenges because you're using, you're paying, you're using, you're paying. And when we talk to FinOps people, we tell them, you need to change that model from pay per use to pay for what you need. And if you think about it, that's the whole story of FinOps. The company is using, and you just need to tell them, we need to trim what you don't need. Because in about, I think 99% of the companies we've seen always had excess cost, always have excess cost. And this is coming across how they purchase the pricing from the cloud, how they commit to the cloud, like their machines are idle, they have a lot of wasted capacity, And there's a lot of things you can trim. So where does it start? It starts with the right culture of understanding that you need to pay for what you need and not for what you use. And the second thing is having the right tooling to discover. And then what's really important, the next step after discover is to automate. Because if you treat cost optimization as a one-time project, you will always suffer from this. Cost optimization is a continuous thing. Just like you have continuous integration, continuous delivery, cost optimization is continuous optimization. And that would be my answer to that question, Srinivas.
No, that's an interesting point that you made, because one of the conversations we always have, and certainly I come from a generation where it was all driven by licenses, and enterprises used to buy tons and tons of licenses, and after a point of time, you never knew how many licenses. Nobody would know how many licenses you had, how many were used, are you under, are you over, and so that conversation was. A lot of consultants made a lot of money telling people, I'll count your licenses. So it's a huge mindset. And it's very strange. We use our mobile phones. We go buy data packages. And even if you are not technology literate, you still have a sense of how much data you want and how much voice you want. Now you're bringing that kind of a concept into your enterprises, and enterprises having to think about it. Taking this further, Piyush, I want you to build on this, because in some ways you provide the overarching solution to a client. So it's not just a bunch of boxes, but you're putting them all together and providing a solution to a client. So in that scenario, my question again that I asked Amiram is going to be, how do you inform, how do you educate clients on what's this optimization across the solution, and what is it they will see, not just in their IT functions, but businesses who have their applications, who have their processes or their bots on the cloud?
Interesting. Sure. And Amiram, clearly pointed out, in fact, when we are engaging with our customers, at times it becomes difficult to find out who is the right stakeholder to go and talk about, FinOps, right? And usually customers face a lot of challenges in terms of, one who will own this entire FinOps across the organization. Amiram talked about culture. I think that's a very critical thing. Even if you are driving these initiatives as an organization, if you don't have the culture, this initiative will fall flat, because we all understand there is shadow IT. There are businesses who are consuming cloud for their initiative. There are application owners who are consuming cloud for their requirements, and there are pockets within the organization. And it becomes very difficult to bring all these things together unless you develop a culture across the organization about FinOps and cloud cost optimization. But there are challenges, right? It's not easy. Customers typically have low visibility into their spend. They don't know how to optimize the spend or even the workloads. Right, there are challenges in terms of implementing the governance and processes across these areas. Security and compliance, earlier Sudeep talked about, that's another challenge, right? Most of the customers are facing. So when we are engaging with our customers, we work with our partners like Spot, NetApp. I think one of the first things we try to bring in is how do we bring in automation? A lot of customers, because initially they are not migrating a lot of workloads, try to do this manually, right? And sooner or later they realize that it's not going to work out. By the time they move towards take some steps towards automation, probably it's already too late. Right. So one of the recommendations we give to the customers that automation should not be an afterthought. while you are looking at your migration strategy, looking at migrating your workloads, also start thinking about how will you bring in automation from the FinOps point of view, because that's one of the most critical piece, right? Then cloud governance and those areas. So when we are approaching our customers, we jointly go with our partner NetApp, focus on automation, how this can bring a lot more value in terms of visibility, in terms of chargeback, showback. And then we also bring in our own services in terms of providing people with right cloud and FinOps skills, frameworks like Cloud Center of Excellence, governance frameworks, and our services that help accelerate this complete journey for the customers.
Thank you. Both you and Amiram raised some interesting areas, and I want to get into that in a moment. One was around the culture, and then you spoke about things like who is the stakeholder, who are the stakeholders, where do they sit in the enterprise, and in that context talked about governance and then the economics of this whole infrastructure. But before we get into that, I just want to dig a bit deeper into both for you, Piyush and Amiram, in terms of if you could share some use cases of where some things have worked and some of these things have not worked, and then we can get into. I'll then we will get into the softer aspects of this. But just get a sense of, are we selling snake oil or is this real? Is optimization of the cloud something that you are deploying and you've got and some just some experiences of both the plus and minus? Either of you, Piyush, Amiram, actually both of you, but whatever, who wants to take the lead? Amiram, you want to start off?
Go ahead, Piyush.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, again, this is one area where we are working in advanced engagements with a lot of our customers. And, we see a lot of value that we are able to bring in. This is one area where it is, quite clear in terms of benefits, right? This is real dollar value that can be shown back to the key stakeholders when it comes to cloud spend, right? So it's not TCO, it is the real dollar value that we believe we are saving for a lot of our customers through these initiatives. I quickly want to share one example of successful engagement, and then I will also share one example where things didn't go very well for us, right? So one example is of a customer, based out of UK. This is a large building material business group. They have been spending approximately $3 million per month on their cloud spend, approximately 50 subscriptions, 250 applications running in cloud, around 100 plus SAP instances, non-SAP large estate, right? And this customer was facing a lot of challenge in terms of increasing cost on public cloud. They were not clear how they will be able to, optimize the complete spend. There were, groups within the organization who were consuming cloud, and there was no one to guide them or control them or even show back that what the cloud spend is. And that was a big challenge for them. And, at the end of the month, they just used to get bills from the hyperscalers and realize that these are significantly out of budget. Another challenge was the approval processes, right? There were no clear processes defined in terms of who is going to approve the spend, especially in cases where there was scale out, which was happening, right? accountability was missing, right? So those were the typical challenges. We went back, we helped them establish the complete governance process. We helped them establish the cloud center of excellence, where we were able to define a very clear vision in terms of FinOps. And we were able to reach out to the key stakeholders, not only the procurement team, not only the business units, application teams. We were able to identify the key stakeholders and define a very clear governance process. And then, we also introduced Spot into the environment, and we were able to bring in a lot of automation, which earlier, a lot of those things were being done either manually, or there was not a very clear visibility across the organization. Things were happening in silo, right? So through that, we were able to optimize the spend significantly. There are recommendations in terms of reserve instances. How can you optimize the instances as per the application workloads? How can you optimize the month-end spend? How can you better select the workloads, right? So there are multiple things which we did, and we were able to do a complete waste elimination of around $11,000 per month. We were able to do the right sizing of a lot of instances, which again helped us save around $50,000 per month. The reserve instance optimization, a lot of workloads which should have been utilizing reserve instances were not utilizing that. That again resulted in around $50,000 of monthly savings. So that is how it worked out. Now the second example is where things really didn't work out for us. This customer based out of North America, they were looking for cloud cost optimization. Unfortunately, in this case, we started working with one of the teams which we thought is the key stakeholder in the entire organization, and we created the complete FinOps framework over there. But when we went into execution, we realized that there are multiple other stakeholders within that organization who have not been onboarded in terms of the objectives. And that project, because of the communication gap, because we didn't have very strong governance processes in place, we couldn't achieve what we were able to achieve in the earlier customer example that I took. Thanks.
Sure. Andriana, before we, Amirama, come to you, we have a question.
We've got two questions, actually. So the first one
Great.
goes back to the people, culture, and kind of leadership discussion. Are you seeing any impacts from the Great Resignation on how IT leaders are approaching their cloud initiatives?
Excellent. And can I just add to that question? And Sudeep, I put you on the spot here. Amira made a point about culture change. It's a mindset change. In the good old days, IT cost was one corporate overhead, and it was peanut buttered across everything else, across the organization. Piyush made a point that, and even his examples that he gave about who's actually involved in the decision making, who's involved in the deciding on allocation and workloads and so on, and then hence the economics of it and how it is borne across the organization. So coming to this question that Andriana just, and thank you to whoever has asked, how do we bring these softer aspects of, is it the CIO who drives this change program, this culture change, mindset change, bringing various stakeholders in, or is it somebody else? Or we bring a change consultant and help input? How have you seen this?
Well, if anybody needs a change consultant, I'll send.
No, you're not allowed.
That's fine. So I'll give you an example, okay?
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. So this was about 2 years back, and this is a major bank. I'm not going to name them. This is a big bank in the UK, one of the largest. And I walk in. You have the top three global suppliers. You can think of who are they? And I walk into them, and I kind of, I was leading the center of excellence, and the first day on the floor, and I asked them that, guys, how do you measure what you're delivering, right? So I was coming from an agile mindset. Okay, what's your velocity and all of that, but without even getting into that, I just said, how do you measure what you're delivering? And the guy said, oh, no, we are agile. We don't need to deliver anything. So, so when you talk about culture, culture differs so much from organization to organization. Even when you're talking about agile, everybody has their own version of agile. Whether it's safe, whether it's Spotify, whether you mix it up and create your own. And you talked about CIOs. The issue is, are we trying to make a change in a legacy organization, or are we trying to make a change in a newer organization? Because if it's a legacy organization, you also got to realize that the people taking the decisions are part of the legacy as well. And one of the biggest mindset change is actually talking to those senior stakeholders and saying, that will have a bearing on your job. So it is a psychological issue that, 20 years ago, we took a decision of buying mainframe, and now, I have to change to cloud, but, what if the board throws me out? Why did it's not relevant anymore. It's not relevant. And moving with the times, I personally don't think that the legacy, the enterprise legacy, not the infrastructure. I mean, infrastructure hasn't moved on, but the people who are there, who are part of that legacy, hasn't moved on. I talked to a lot of public sector client, and there was a public sector client last week who said, "Oh, actually, forget cloud. We are not worried about cloud first. But can you make sure that we are SaaS first?" So, but if you are SaaS first, you're automatically cloud first. I mean, how do you go SaaS without being on the cloud? But no, cloud is different and SaaS is different. We need to be SaaS. We need to be everything SaaS. So I said, okay, guys, I need to spend 15 days of my time to make you understand what is SaaS and what is cloud, and then take you through the journey. So there is a lot of legacy, and the legacy is with the people. And people have not moved on in the enterprises. People have not moved on. The CIO who was technology savvy even 7 years back has lost touch with the changes that has happened. And there are so many things. There are so many things that's available as tools to optimize your movement to the cloud, the way you move, and things are moving extremely fast. So how do you keep up with it?
Yeah, and I think Sudeep, the one thing that I would add, and just talking to clients, and that's why this question is so relevant. The first mindset change has to come from the IT function. Historically, IT function delivered a bunch of things, whether it was a laptop, that's what people in the enterprise saw, touched, and felt. Everything else was opaque, and only a bunch of nerdy guys who were sitting in rooms and air-conditioned rooms were bothered about it, and they would. But so in that sense, as long as people did not complain about something going down, something not working, the CIO, the IT function was fine, the CIO was fine. But I think what's happening is that, and this is where, as businesses start to step into the cloud discussion, the CIO has to, as an individual, and the IT function has to go through a significant mindset change. And the CIO has now to become a change leader And the IT function has to become a change function to drive this conversation across the enterprise, across the businesses, and then get them to think differently. And
Totally
that's
different
what
skill
I'm coming.
sets.
Absolutely.
Totally,
Amiram,
totally different skill sets required.
Absolutely. And Amiram, this is where I want to pick because you raised this point about culture. To me, the IT function and the CIO or the CTO, they are first that mindset. They have to start to accept this model that you talked about, pay for what you need. And then they become the evangelists of that culture in the rest of the organization, who are not, let's be very clear, they are not technologists. They don't understand the boxes and squares that you have put elsewhere. So I just want to get a sense of how is this something, as you go through your deployment of your tool, how do you achieve this? How do you convince the CIO to be the change leader?
So I agree with everything that was said here. I think Piyush was raising really good points, and Sudeep by bringing the example of interacting with the bank, thinking they're already agile. I can tell you what I'm saying repeatedly is the problem, the main challenge that we're facing talking with customer is, first of all, is awareness. They're not aware that they can achieve these things. And I think this is why us from Avasant, HCL, Spot, I think we have critical role in educating customers. Like before selling, before providing service, it's education. We need to educate about the things that customers can achieve in that big fog of complexity and cost. That's one thing. And the second thing, always, is a company called Do Nothing. Because if customers were not going to use my product, they're probably going to do nothing. And that's our biggest competitor. And I think because if you think about it, you can drive a car without putting a seatbelt. The car will still work. It can drive fast, but you'll be in serious. That would be my take on it.
Excellent. Thank you. Adriana, we have another question.
We do. Okay, understanding that it is still early days, what is the success rate with the business case on cost savings holding, considering demand management issues that often exist with the ability to spin up quickly and often to decommission down leading?
Piyush, you want to take it? Yeah, oh, sorry, Amiram, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, this is something that's really burning inside me, because this is essentially our ROI, return on investment, at the end of the day. And we're seeing, and this is not like a marketing message, and this is not marketing numbers. The average cost savings that we're able to generate on compute when we interact with the customer is anywhere between 60 and 80%. And to be very specific, it's 73% across all of our customers. They're able to achieve cost savings on compute instances.
And what is the time frame within which you can deliver this ROI? What's a realistic expectation that a CIO can go and tell their CEO or the board?
So there are two parameters here. There is one is the percentage of saving, and the second parameter is the dollar. So the dollar saved. So we're seeing in the first quarter, like the percentage of saving is the same percentage of saving. The first quarter of using this, it's 70% savings, but maybe few amount of dollars because you're just ramping. But then in the third quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, that usually grows the dollars from 4 to 10x. So we're seeing customers adopting slowly, starting, just wanting to believe that this is not too good to be true. And then scaling with that. So you're getting and increasing that dollar amount to, and savings is relative from a building construction company and a startup and small, medium business. So that's what we see. You can get into basically from the coverage of your cloud to about 50% of the coverage of your cloud within 3 quarters and get that 73% of savings.
Yeah. Thank you, Amiram. Piyush, I'm going to ask this question to you in a slightly different way, which is, what is the kind of investments or costs, I'm using both, that clients have to put upfront or through the adoption journey to be able to achieve ROIs that Amiram has been talking about, just mentioned?
Yeah, I think one of the, other than the automation tool that is absolutely critical and we recommend customers to invest in, there are a lot of other costs that the customers have to account for, right? And these are typically cost associated with, time to be spent by the leadership team, as we earlier talked about, and Amiram pointed towards 60 to 70% cost savings. Just one thing I want to highlight over there is that these 60 to 70% cost savings are where with the customers where we have, coached them. As Amiram earlier talked about, the first thing is to educate the customers, right? So this tool will give a very clear visibility in terms of what you can save. But then you have to go back to the key stakeholders to make sure that, these savings are actually executed, right? If we go back to the application owners, they understand there are cost savings which are possible, but they don't want to take the next step. Then it becomes a futile exercise, right? And therefore, coming back to your original question in terms of cost investments, educating the larger organization about these initiatives, times by key stakeholders in terms of understanding, probably setting up a cloud center of excellence, which could be dedicated or designated. Those are the cost investments that need to be made upfront before you can realize the benefits of FinOps.
Sudeep, can you just, or costs or investments to build those software capabilities to address either governance issues or culture issues that Amiram talked about? Could you give a sense of and I'm sorry, I've got to give you literally a minute.
No. I think
really
the fundamental thing that what Amiram said earlier was, the fundamental thing the CIOs need to do is to learn, and they need to get onto this learning journey. That what's the learning gap? They need to understand the learning gap, and I would suggest get a coach or somebody who can explain to them the learning gap, and really they themselves need to understand who can help them then go through that journey of adopting cloud and getting the maximum out of it, getting the return on investment. I think that's the easy part. I think the biggest, the most difficult part is to learn, is to adapt, their own
world.
Yeah, adapt to the new world.
Yeah. Thank you, Sudeep. That is great. I reckon we just got 4 minutes.